Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from Ciphr in partnership with Silver Cloud HR. Today we're looking at the top 10 HR system mistakes that people make and how to avoid them. I'm Catherine and I'm Ciphr's Head of Content. Joining me today is Anna, Silver Cloud HR's Advisory Delivery Manager. Welcome Anna, it's brilliant to have you with us today.
Thank you, Catherine. Lovely to see so many lovely attendees on the call, and the numbers keep going up. So looking forward to sharing some insights with you all.
Fantastic. I'm just going to quickly spin through what we're covering today. We're going to do some quick introductions to Ciphr and to Silver Cloud HR in case you haven't come across our services before. We're also going to then, Anna's going to look at the top 10 HR system selection mistakes and crucially how to avoid them. And then we'll have time at the end for Anna to answer your pressing questions about HR system selection processes. So if you have any questions for Anna at any point during the broadcast, send them in using the control panel that you see on your screen, and I'll put them to her at the end of the webinar. Remember, if you're watching live, this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be emailed to you soon after the broadcast ends. This means you can revisit any of the content at any time or share it with your colleagues should you wish to go over some of the information together. Just a quick introduction to Ciphr in case you haven't come across us before. We're a specialist provider of HR, payroll, recruitment and learning software through our HCM platform, Ciphr Connect. We won't be diving into Ciphr solutions on this broadcast, so if you want more information about how our software could support your HR ambition, email us at info@ciphr.com, visit our website, which is ciphr.com, or opt in for more information at the end of the broadcast. I'm going to hand over to Anna now from Silver Cloud, so please bear with us as we change the slides over.
Amazing, thank you so much, Catherine. Can everybody see my screen? I'm hoping that's a yes.
Yes, Catherine, you can. Thank you.
Amazing. Right, so my name's Anna Johnson. I work for Silver Cloud, and today, as Catherine has mentioned, we'll be going through some of the selection mistakes that people make. So Silver Cloud, just a little bit about what we do. We're a whole of market digital transformation consultancy, and we specialise in HR, payroll and people related technologies. We have the pleasure of working across lots of different sectors, industries, different clients that we have, and we work in partnership with lots of experienced employees that have worked across, as I said, lots of different industries. We offer unbiased strategic advice on HR and payroll selections. We also do project management, we do software implementations, and we also have some managed services. Some of the solutions areas that we include are HR. I have lots of HR consultants that have expertise in that field. I have a number of payroll consultants, and we have people that have worked in the talent acquisition space, e-learning and development, workforce management, and benefits and recognition. So we have a little bit of everything from the consultants that they can bring to our clients, and we like to bring some of our experiences and knowledge when we work with lots of different people across the UK and the world, really. And just onto the next slide now. Hopefully this is going to work for us, I'm hoping. So Catherine is going to do a little poll for us.
Yeah, that's right, Anna. Thank you. So a quick poll just to get a temperature check of our audience with us today. What's your greatest fear about implementing a new HRIS? Please choose one of the options that you can see on your screen now. They are business disruption, choosing the wrong system, poor stakeholder and end user engagement, not realising the benefit of your investment, or another fear altogether. Please send in a comment if other is your choice there. So Anna, you obviously deal with a lot of people looking at a new system. What are the one thing that people tend to be like really worried about getting wrong or going wrong for them in their project?
Okay, so a lot of HR senior leaders, the jobs are pretty much on the line when they go out and select a new system. So not getting it right and actually not getting the business buy-in and realising the benefits of the back of the selection really causes quite a lot of worries to senior stakeholders. And sometimes they come to us to offer that helping hand and that reassurance to make sure that we're helping them make the right decision. And we follow nice, strong processes to make sure that everything's kind of documented thoroughly, and that people are engaged appropriately from the beginning, and that, you know, they're not making some of the silly mistakes that we see organisations go to. Sometimes we see it the other way around, where they've made a selection mistake and they come back to us to help us fix some of the issues as well. I'm interested to see what the audience thought as well, Catherine.
Yeah, so let's close the poll and share the results now. So 57% of you today said that you're worried about choosing the wrong system. 29% of you are worried about poor stakeholder and end user engagement. Or fewer of you are concerned about business disruption or not realising the benefit of your investment. So hopefully some of the advice that Anna's going to share today will help to put your minds at ease when it comes to choosing the wrong system and not engaging those really important stakeholders and end users, because I know those are things that we've got coming up later in the broadcast.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you for the audience for contributing there with us this morning. And you know, it doesn't surprise me that a number of you have said choosing the wrong solution. There is so much choice out there. Okay, I'm just going to move on to the next slide, and again, hopefully this will work. So the first area that we've got on here to kind of identify for you is getting the research stage wrong. And so what we find is that a lot of people don't realise how much choice there is available at the moment from the different vendors. So you could go for a single platform, you could go and choose a best of breed. There's licensing questions that we've got at the moment. So do you pay for one system? Do you pay for loads of systems? There's SaaS models, we've got global coverage, and there's integration. So all of these different points that we've got on the screen are different areas of points of considerations. You've got to do your research. You know, what have you got today? Have you got anything, or don't you have anything that you're working with from a HR tech perspective? Are you trying to automate? Are you trying to bring people in line to use your technology to have a better culture within your organisation? Some of our clients have recently said that they'd rather go for a single solution. However, not always single platforms can give you the best outcome for all the software requirements that you may have. And some of it's to do with the strategic direction that you as an organisation are trying to get to, and that will affect the type of solution that you want to go towards. And meeting with the different vendors. So as most of you will probably know, there is a lot of choice out in the marketplace at the moment. Ciphr is one of the providers out there, but there are lots and lots of different providers that offer HR, tech, payroll, learning, talent acquisition, and so on. So we do suggest that you assess the marketplace before you put your business cases together. To get an idea of costs, you might want to ask the vendors to provide some sneaky pricing ahead. Depending on what tier solution you go for out in the marketplace, you may find that some vendors are more willing to share the costs with you before you've committed to any demonstrations, and some are less committed to sharing pricing at early stages. The systems you'll be looking at will depend on the organisation size, so how big or small you are, the type of industry that you're in. So some vendors have got more experience in some sectors than others, and asking for references is obviously really, really good. And what functionality you're trying to achieve. So if strategically, you don't have a learning agenda, or you're trying to grow your workforce, you might not be looking for a solution that offers that within it. Likewise, if you're happy with a best of breed solution that you're using internally for recruitment, management of hires, you may not want to look for a solution that has everything within it. Or you may decide that actually it's time for a change, and you want to choose something that can offer you the wider scope that you're looking for. And some of the organisations are based in the UK, and some of them are based globally. Again, depending your type of organisations, we've recently worked with clients that they chose a system in the USA, and they're trying to implement it across UK and Europe. And some of the requirements that were gathered in the US were different to the ones that were gathered from UK and Europe. And it's taken more time for them to kind of make sure that it's going in properly in the organisation. And most systems are now cloud-based. So 5 years ago, what we found was that a lot of solutions were still on-premise. So the poor IT teams were having to, periodically update the solutions. HR didn't really know what was going on with those updates. And now having the solutions more cloud-based means that the vendors take more accountability for those upgrades and making sure that everybody's using more up-to-date solutions. And as the software develops, the clients are also seeing the benefit for that. And you need to also be clear with the vendor of like with the vendor about your objectives. What is it that you're trying to achieve as part of this system selection that you're trying to do? Hopefully some of those give you a bit of a flavour. And the next thing that I've got on this slide is just around seeking external insight. There's no single way, single system that will be able to do absolutely everything for you. So actually having the opportunity to manage internal expectations, stakeholder expectations is quite key to do from the beginning. You have to be open-minded and get help if you need to. Use your network. If you can, seek external advice from the likes of ourselves or other consultancies, gather references, be mindful of asking for advice and recommendations on social media platforms. So that doesn't always provide you the best insight. The next pitfall that we find is like failing to involve key stakeholders. So again, some of you would have come across this in your organisation already. We find that if stakeholders are not engaged right from the beginning, so key business decision makers, the process doesn't go as smoothly, and it can take quite a lot longer to get that decision made. People get a little bit worried about making the wrong decision, as we identified earlier on with the poll, and also it takes longer to get that process going and actually start the implementation. So get to know them, so understand who your stakeholders are, what the priorities are, and how to better understand them. You might want to do a stakeholder analysis. What is it that they want? When do they want it by? And how are your plans and actions going to affect those goals of those stakeholders that you have identified? It's much easier to get buy-in from the decision makers before we start the project, as I've mentioned. Determining who needs to be involved in the project is also quite key. So we find that the likes of the IT department, finance departments, as well as obviously HR, are really key areas of the business that you want to engage with. And sometimes we also like to involve like a group of employees and managers who are good influences in the workspace, so that when you're going through your selection, they've got a voice as well. Ultimately, your solution is going to be used by 100% of your workforce. The administration of that solution will be used only by a small percentage of the organisation, which will be potentially the HR teams or system administrators that you have. And think about who needs to be involved in your project. So again, you know, different organisations choose to involve more people, others choose to involve less people. The best projects that we get to be involved with are those who, at the beginning, the stakeholders to identify, you've got clear differentiations of who your decision makers are. You've got a project team in place that's kind of managing their selection, and they're kind of working through the different business stakeholders, updating the senior decision makers, and progressing the project well for you. And everybody will have different priorities, so it's hard to juggle those, but making sure that those priorities are differentiated for the different departments, and you can actually tailor them to them will help you. So we do say that if you've got the time and the appetite to actually do a stakeholder map, will actually help you really nail down who are the people that you need to get involved in the project from the beginning. We do have a little template, sorry I flicked too quickly, but we do have a little template available that you can download, and Catherine will share the resources with you guys afterwards. The next one that we've got on here is the forgetting to build your business case. Okay, so why are you going to market? Is it the first time that you've got a new HR and payroll system? Is it a replacement system? So some of the questions that we've got on the screens are things that you might want to ask yourself. Is your system currently on premise, and do you need a cloud-based solution? Do you need more self-service functionality for your employees? Has your organisation structure changed in recent months or years? What are the post-pandemic requirements? So the organisation probably has shifted quite a lot in the way it's working now post-pandemic to how it was operating before. We see a lot more hybrid working. We see a lot more managers, you know, being in contact with employees in different ways, electronically and like through Teams. Is your organisation ready for the change? So there's some of the questions that you might want to start asking yourself. You might want to start thinking about an exec summary as well when you're putting your business case together. So why do you want that in your system? And make sure that you use that as your starting point. This will help you prioritise your list of requirements on the process. Typically, we hear system is too old, not really doing what we wanted to do, it's on premise, we want to be in a cloud, in the cloud-based solution, want more self-service, etc. These are all really valid reasons for wanting to change, but they don't really equal a business case. So what we actually say is that if you materialise the reason why you want a new system and you're able to justify it, that might be a little bit better. So think about how much time things have taken you guys to do today. So how long it's taken to process a starter, a leaver, manage contractual changes. And if you're able to kind of quantify some of that information and put it in your business case, it will help you validate and get the business buy-in. The other thing is that you need to consider is also is if your business is ready, have they got the right mindset for changing the system? Is the culture in place to accept a new solution? Do we have the investment available and the resources to actually make this change happen? Some of those things, if they're forgotten, can cause a lot of headaches after. And time again, we get asked by our clients to come in and help them where they haven't thought about the resources that they needed to actually run the project, to see, to do the data cleansing when they were going through their implementation, and they haven't got the skills. And some of these things will actually help you if you think about them before you start your project. It will help you in the longer term. Establishing your guiding principles. What are your guiding principles of the project? What is the impact and what you're trying to achieve for your business? What are your chosen goals, priorities and objectives for the new system? Different types of return on investment. So not always you're going to be able to say that by putting in a new system you're going to be able to reduce your HR headcount. That's unlikely. What you'll be able to do is redeploy those individuals to actually do more value-added tasks, spend time with the workforce and actually do more employee relations types of activities as opposed to spending all the time doing administrative tasks. And think of the beginning of the project. This selection is the beginning of the project and not the end. So selecting solutions is just the very, very first thing. It normally takes us, when we work with clients, anything between 13 to 19 weeks to help them select a system. And that's everything from, helping them with the stakeholder engagement, gathering system requirements, going out and putting a tender together on behalf of the client, organising demos, down selecting and so on. Goals and how to measure them. So functionality is important, but it's not, but your wish list should go deeper than that. What are you trying to achieve with the new system? Is it a single truth? Is it automation? Is it better employee experience? More predictive analytics? Is it improved culture? There's so many organisations out there that, when it comes to getting questions around how much absence do we have, it's most of the time a finger in the air. They're not able to really measure some of those analytics from a HR perspective. What's your turnover? We get asked all this information. Single the truth, we don't trust the data. So a lot of clients do suffer from some of these questions that we've got in the system, and they're things that you should consider when you're thinking about selecting a new solution. Related back to the benefits it will bring to the business, think about this so what. So you have a better employee experience. What would that mean? Would that mean better engagement? You should hope so. Better data will also help in many areas. So there's no more gut feel and better reputation. What is the risk of not changing your HR system? So you may start losing employees if they don't feel engaged. If you haven't got the right data, you might not be able to make the right decisions for your organisation. So hopefully some of those bits kind of help as well. Next one that we've got on here is promising and expecting too much. So you have to be realistic. Regardless of what system you go out to, it's not going to do everything for you. And I think if you go with an open mind, you will realise that there will be compromises that you have to make, and it'll be about identifying where those areas are that you are willing to make the compromise with. You have to be realistic with the project timescales and deliverables. So time and time again, we get clients saying, "I want to get this system in 3 months or 9 months," you know, and we say, "Have you got the right resources in place to be able to make this happen?" So some clients want to go really, really quick once they've selected their solution. But you have to be realistic. You will put your existing teams under quite a lot of pressure. Ultimately, they will become the system owners in the future of the new solution. So making sure that they come along the journey with you and not pushing too much change too quickly onto them will only be a positive thing for yourselves. Do you really have the resources to dedicate to selecting and implementing your new system? So some organisations choose to go out to the marketplace and buy temporary resource in to implement the new solution, or backfill the experts that are running the business today within those key departments, so that the key project resource can be more experienced staff. No right or wrong way about it, other than if you put too much pressure, as I've mentioned, on your current teams, they might not be able to cope with everything, and then you might get turnover, which will cause more of a problem longer term, because then not only would you have lost the individual, but you also lost all the knowledge that they've learned on that new solution from when you've started your project. And also, what are strengths and what do you need to outsource? So think about what skill sets you have in-house versus things that you might need help with. So some clients come to us and say they'd like us to act as the intermediates between the vendors and themselves to kind of help the project kind of glue together. We find those projects work beautifully because we've done, or my team and I have done, quite a number of implementations across different organisations, so we've got the experience and we help become that glue between an organisation that hasn't really gone through that process in the first place. And next one that we've got on here is not adopting an end user mindset. So what we've got on here is the system is for your employees. So the workforce, as I mentioned earlier, of the HR department and payroll department is going to be quite small in proportion. They will be administering the system, but you need to make sure that your end users are going to want to use your systems. And there's different ways that organisations measure that. So again, if I relate it back to the business case, you might want to understand how engaged your current workforce is with your current solution and have that as a benchmark point that you can use in the future when you use your new solution. How will this project impact other teams? So are you going to need resource and support from other areas of the business to make this happen? So some organisations forget that in order to land change well, you have to engage with employees. The best way to engage with employees is through communications. Different organisations do it in different ways. So some choose to do it over email, some intranet pages, some send senior leadership videos out to the workforce. So you might need other resources from other departments to help you land some of these messages. How will the software affect the day-to-day tasks? So you might be asking managers to do more for themselves. You might be asking employees to take accountability. What we've got to remember is that actually technology has moved on drastically, not just in workspaces, but also in your personal life. So social media, most people out there have it today. And actually, they're quite used to doing that whole self-service within their own personal lives. So asking employees to do things for themselves, so to book their own holidays or to raise a leaver's note against their employee and for the manager to review or do a change of contractual amendments is things that you can ask end user to initiate, and then the HR teams to kind of drive forward. And the other point that I've gone here was just around communicating early, often to boost engagement and understanding. So we like to do this in small bite sizes. So it almost becomes like a little teaser. We're thinking of changing a new system. We've started involving a project team. We're now ready to launch it. We're going to be asking you to change or check your personal details. You can now access your payslip. So slowly you can build up the story to try and help everybody coming the journey with you throughout your organisation. And again, if you get your communications right alongside the system, you'll get a much better adoption. Next one that we've got on here is focusing on the past, not the future. So this is something that some organisations do, but it's not how we've always done things. I hear this saying time and time again. Challenge the team on how things are done today. So if you've got, I remember in recent months, I had a client that they told me they had over 100 spreadsheets that they were keeping to maintain different elements of data within for their employees that they were using for payroll, for managing training pieces. I was completely mortified that we'd gone down to that volume of spreadsheets when they had a quite solid solution, but it hadn't been implemented well and the change hadn't been adopted. Don't just replace it like for like, so challenge the way that you're doing things today. If you think you're doing things too many things in paper, think about how the system can help you automate. New systems should improve processes, don't look to replicate your old ways. This is an opportunity for change for you guys as an organisation. Your new systems is not a spreadsheet, no, it's the same as your outgoing system, which is good. Is your business case, in your business case, you need to make it clear that the new software is an enabler for ongoing change. It's not going to magically change your culture, but it can help you achieve some of those cultural changes that as an organisation you might be trying to drive forward. Ignoring the world of work, that the world of work has changed. So how have your needs changed as an organisation? What are your remote capabilities now that we're post-pandemic? Your workforce management, how are you managing your workforce? So we sometimes get organisations that are rostering employees, and we get to see some really quirky things with solutions at the moment. So with workforce management, years ago, you'd have your card where you tap in and out when you enter the building. Now you can get things like iris recognition, geographical location, clocking and things like that. So when you're exploring your market at the beginning of the selection, make sure you think about how ready your people are for the change, how far you want to push them, and think about the future. Self-service, again, we sometimes get organisations that say, well, we've always done it on behalf of our managers, you know, we approve their holidays, or they're just not doing self-service at all. Access, security and ease of use. Most systems today will allow you to manage user access in quite a lot of detail. So you can show employees as little or as much as you want to show them, and you can help drive the HR agendas forward using your HR systems as well. And think about new ways of working. You know, how has that changed, and how is the system going to help you drive some of those new ways of working? And overlooking the power of integrations. So integrations are needed in most organisations, not just to other HR people systems and your payroll software. Think about other business software too. So we sometimes get finance systems wanting feeds from the HR data. We sometimes get the IT team saying that they want to drive the Active Directory employee user access from the HR system, because ultimately the higher journey begins in HR. And bringing key stakeholders to gain a full picture of their integration needs. There's different types of integrations, so they can vary from API, SFTPs, plugins. I mean, old school would be a CSV file upload, but again, things to watch out for when you're researching the vendors that you want to go to, and things that you might want to ask, because a CSV file will require a lot more manual intervention than an API, which is more automated. Critical systems and avoiding the triangle of death. The next one that we've got on here is not developing the project plan. So believe it or not, a selection is like any other project. Whilst you're not going into implementation mode at this stage, you should think about how you're going to get from not having a system selected to actually starting your implementation. So any clients that come to us, we would always kind of have a project plan that lists all the different types of activities that we would be completing. If you choose not to do a project plan, what you'll find is that you're not getting the traction, you're not getting the movement, and decisions are taking much longer to get. Who'll take ownership and drive that project forward? So you might have the senior HR or HR manager in your organisation, driving this change. You might want to consider bringing somebody in that's got expertise in managing of that project or the selection. And as we've suggested on here, just create some high-level timescales and deliverables for each stage. And make sure that when you go into doing your demonstrations with the different vendors, you structure them. What we do is we provide the same agendas once we've agreed them with our clients to the vendors that they're inviting to demo, so that when the client is reviewing those systems, they're getting a little bit of structure consistently across the different vendors, so it makes it easier to compare off the back. And the last one that I've got on my list is making assumptions. So your project won't run itself. The market is moving very quickly. So then let your hard work go to waste. Consider bringing in external support for accountability, motivation, and to help mediate between you and the vendors. Championing the project internally, and continue to ask questions. So in summary, the 10 steps that we've come across today is make sure you do your research, involve your key stakeholders, build your business case, set appropriate expectations, adopt an end-user mindset, plan for your future needs, take account for new ways of working, think about your integrations, develop a project plan, don't make assumptions. And I'd like now to open to questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I'm just going to talk for a minute just to give you a little bit of a break. So that was a very intense half an hour, but you've covered absolutely loads of ground there that I hope our audience will find really helpful when it comes to thinking about their next system selection project. As Anna mentioned, we have time now for her to answer your questions. If you have any questions about the specific points she's covered so far, or other things that are on your mind when it comes to system selection projects, please send them in using the control panel that you can see on your screen, and we'll cover those off. I've got a few questions to get us going, Anna. We talked a bit about getting the right team of stakeholders involved. How do you choose who to put on that internal selection team? And are there any specific skills that HR professionals should be looking to cultivate in themselves to successfully lead such a project or be involved in such a project?
So if it was my project, I'd like to involve a range of employees. If I started off with the HR department, I'd like to have somebody that is responsible for doing the administration of my hires and change requests that come through from the managers. So I'd get somebody that does admin involved in the project. I'd get somebody that does that's quite analytically driven, detail driven, that will help you with your data. So not every HR department that I've worked in has one of those employees, but certainly they will come in very handy throughout the project right from the beginning. Your business partners will give you insights into trying to understand what's going on in your workforce culturally. So again, maybe getting representation, depending on how large your organisation is, you might want to get representation from one of them. And again, depending how wide or small your scope is, if let's say you were to include learning or recruitment, you might want to include those business experts in those areas as part of your discovery when you're trying to gather requirements for your new solution. So that's within the HR team, but I don't like leaving it there. From a senior perspective, you want to get senior buy-in, and the solution and the investment of a new solution is not by any way, shape or form light. So making sure that you've got that senior buy-in, that there's the appetite to have a new solution will obviously help you along the way. They might not want to be in all the discovery sessions, so that's absolutely fine, but they might want to be in, getting updates on how the selection is progressing, and they want to know that every decision that you're making along the way is being done for the right reasons. We also like to involve IT representation, so whether that's somebody that's very detailed on infrastructures or integrations, somebody that understands like the area on how how you are laying your IT infrastructure today will be really handy. And we also like to involve somebody in the finance department, and we like to make sure that they are a key stakeholder within the project as well. So like your finance team, it could be, you know, somebody that deals with general ledgers, that does the postings out to third parties like your pension providers and things like that. They will give you what they need from a financial perspective. And if you're going to want to go that extra mile and make sure that you're involving everybody from the beginning, you know, doing a small user group of employees and managers, they will tell you what's working for them today, how the organisation culture is, and feeding all that information in from all those different stakeholders will get you in a really, really good place.
Fantastic, thank you. That's quite a daunting list of stakeholders to put together. So when you're meeting with vendors, can you have such a thing as like too many stakeholders on a single meeting with a vendor, or is it better to have everybody on the call if you can, or just like a small selection of people? Because coordinating diaries is always a massive challenge when it comes to any project.
So when we do discovery, so when we're trying to get at the beginning of the project, when we're doing selection and we're trying to gather requirements, we like to do discovery sessions, anything between 5 to 10 people roughly from the business. The smaller groups, what we try and do is like divide up the discovery when we're carrying out with the clients. And what we do is we will get the different groups together. So if we're talking recruitment, we will just get the people that deal with recruitment involved. If we're dealing with like finance and payroll, we'll deal with that group of people. And then we use almost like an insight of all the information that we've gathered to try and compile the right requirements for our clients. So definitely not everybody in one place at once.
Not everybody, but definitely more people the merrier, but not to an unmanageable degree.
And then when you're going to your implementation, so after you've selected and you start your implementation, again, you won't be able to release everybody at once. That's, you know, vendors will know that anyway. The vendor will work with you to try and make it a realistic project plan. But you know, making sure that you can release those people at different stages of the projects to do what they need to do to get the data clean, to, you know, to update templates, to provide the configuration requirements is really, really
good. Okay, great. So one of the things we talked about was integrations, and there was one thing you touched on was avoiding the triangle of death. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
The triangle of death. So we kind of the triangle of death, we see organisations basically not feeding data properly between different systems. Sometimes they don't know where the data, the source of truth is coming from. So who should be driving that particular ownership of the data? So if you're clear around what your source of truth is, and that system's then feeding the other ones, you will get nice, lovely outcomes. If you start saying that your payroll data is the source of truth because that's what you're paying, but then you look at we see this a lot, where a client has got a HR system that's not integrated with their payroll system, let's say. They then go through an implementation and the number of employees that they have listed in the payroll system completely differs to that one held within the HR system. And that's, of course, because that integration hasn't happened correctly. Likewise, we get a lot of that with IT systems, so Active Directories, where they haven't done that integration properly, and then people's jobs, for example, may not be feeding through correctly across to your Active Directory. So it's so key to get those plug-in points and identify where you're going to hold your source of truth. That's what we call it, the triangle.
Okay, and it's really difficult to unpick and get right. So one of our audience, Claire, asked, are you seeing any trends in what's best to have or what people are tending to lean towards versus like having a single provider of HR and payroll, or sort of an integrated best of breed approach?
So I've seen more clients wanting a one solution that tries to do more than trying to go to best of breeds. Historically, what's happened is that clients have gone out and said, I need a recruitment solution, I need a learning solution, I need a benefit solution. And over the last couple of years, what we're seeing is even the vendors have clocked on to this, that this is happening out by clients. So what's happening is that the vendors are actually saying, well, actually, if I can't offer that particular functionality within my solution, I'm going to try and build a relationship or a partnership with a best of breed and build those integrations so the data does flow seamlessly. For the client, that's brilliant because you're getting best of breed functionality within an all-in-one because the integrations have already been built, and we're certainly seeing more of that. It's not always the case, and it doesn't work for every client. So it's very dependent on where your organisation is at and where you're trying to get to in the future. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely what Ciphr offers. Like, for example, if I can just mention our solutions briefly, we offer HR, payroll, recruitment and learning solutions in-house, but also have a number of partners we work off to provide those, as Anna described, those like pre-existing integrations and those working relationships in other areas such as time and attendance and rostering systems. And I guess whether you're going to go, it's down to personal preference and your organisation, and also to some degree like your appetite for change. Like some organisations might be ready to change HR and payroll together. Some might be ready to change, for example, HR and then payroll at a later date, and that's all to do with your budget and how much capacity you have and what's the pressing problem you're trying to resolve.
Definitely. And again, like I said, your organisation, you might love the solution that you're using at the moment for doing your applicant tracking. If you go to a vendor that has a best of breed partnership already in place, they've already built the integration, so you're not going to get charged for things like that either, because those relationships and those integrations have already been pre-built. So there's advantages as well.
Yeah, definitely things to think about. So a question from Sam, who is a sole HR and payroll manager, and it's really important for them to have external support from the new HR system and the vendor to help train their managers. Is that something that vendors usually support their clients with?
Okay, so what we see is basically the vendors, again, Catherine, you can give your view as well, but what I see from across the industry, most vendors will upskill your system administrators and anybody that like is going to be managing the solutions. What they don't tend to do is go out and manage any training for your end users. But you've got to think there's a lot of the solutions now that are very, very intuitive. So the amount of training, what you would have had to do 5-10 years ago is completely different to what you've got to do today. So they work very much in the same way as social media works, majority of solutions. So it's very intuitive, and it's just about making sure that you're getting that continuity with those end users. Some vendors also provide kind of more not bespoke, but standard end user guides and things like that. Again, not all vendors do this, but you might have some content there that you can play with to kind of tailor it to the configuration that you end up with from your solution. But in general, they don't tend to do end user training for your workforce.
Yeah,
and negotiate it. But,
yeah. Yeah, I would sort of echo that when it comes to Ciphr's solution. So our team can support you with buying sessions and providing like video assets and things for training managers and engaging end users with the product. But we would say that our system is so intuitive that you don't need that extensive training. As Anna says, it's all built in browsers and in ways that are fairly familiar. Although there will, of course, be maybe some subsets in your organisation who are less tech savvy and they just need a little bit more support. I think perhaps in your case, Sam, the question is really putting that end user experience at the forefront of your requirements gathering and making sure that if the system isn't user friendly and intuitive to use for managers, then that perhaps is not the right system for your organisation at this time.
I've done a couple of other things in other organisations, Sam. So sometimes to drive the change forward, I've identified like champions, and I don't know how big your organisation is, but identified like champions in different business areas to kind of they become your super trainers or your super promoters of the solution, and you use them to help you deliver the message further down the workforce. I used to work for a big retailer. We did that there, and it was done in all the shops. And I've done it at local authority, and in those days we were more based in the office. So for every new system change that we landed, they had lanyards, and if they were an expert on the particular system, we gave them a pin that they were an expert, so people could go and ask them questions as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea, and it's about that ongoing engagement and communication, like throughout the change process and implementation. Like, you want people with you on the journey, so that when a new HR system or any other system arrives, it's not just a massive shock. They know that it's coming, they know the benefits and why that change is being made. Yeah, Sam said their organisation is just 80 employees, but only themselves in HR. So tricky when you're a sole HR practitioner, but there are ways of working with it, or working with external consultancies like Ciphr.
You can get external help, and ultimately, like I said, if you are going out and you're a small organisation, getting external help will help you land things easier. But don't do it with your hands tied behind your backs, because you won't be able to land the change so successfully.
One thing I wanted to ask Anna was around timings of projects and system selection projects. Is it easy to get the timing wrong? So, for example, starting at a period where nobody has capacity to support, or perhaps starting a project too late, like if you know that you need to make a system change, but you kind of put it off for a bit, and then get to a position where you need one quite urgently.
So I can't tell you how many selections I've done in the last 2.5 years. There's been plenty. We constantly review how long it takes us to support clients through the selection projects. And from the moment when we start engaging our clients to when they've physically signed a contract with a vendor, they range, like I said, around between 13 weeks and 19 weeks just to select the system. And that's basically getting your engagement from your people early on, moving them along the way, getting them involved in the demos, doing analysis along the way to make sure that your requirements can be met. So things like that you can do it quicker, and again, depending on how big or small the solution that you're going for. We like to tier the solutions. So, enterprise solutions would be a tier 1 in our space. A tier 2 solution would be more mid kind of market, and then you've got your tier 3 solutions, which are more targeted at smaller organizations, and they tend to be, off the shelf solutions that you don't have as much configurations, that don't take as long to implement. With a tier 2 solution, you're going to have to configure it to the needs of your organizations, and an enterprise solution, it goes further in terms of the investment of what you're trying to achieve for an organization. If somebody came to me and said, I want a tier 1 solution, but they're an 80 headcount organization, I said, you're going, don't go there. If you're an 80 headcount organization, you're thinking, I probably wouldn't even suggest you go anywhere near the tier 2s. You probably want to go around a tier 3 solution that's off the shelf, that's going to help you grow with your organization. And it might be in another 3 or 5 years' time, you then decide that actually we've grown as an organization and we're ready for the next solution.
Okay, great, thank you. I've got a couple more questions here. So we're aiming to finish at midday, so if you have any more questions, send them in so we cover them live for you. Question for from Anne for Anna. What's your experience of the ongoing business as usual once the system is live? If there are any issues, the project has ended and the project team has been disbanded, so what's the best way to ensure the HR team has the skills to support any future issues?
Okay, so again, we do see this as well happening. So I would suggest that you document decisions that are made throughout the project well. If you've got process maps of how you do your transactions now and in the future documented, that also helps. So let's say I was to be run over by a bus and I was responsible for the HR solution and all the processes of how things happened and the decisions that I'd made throughout my configuration were in my head. Nobody's going to know how to unpick that system. Sometimes we get asked to go into organisations where the HR administrator has left the business after they've implemented. This does happen, and we see that quite a lot in organisations because people get the implementation bug, I like to call it, where they've done an implementation, they really enjoyed themselves doing it, and then they want to do more. So business as usual almost becomes a little bit dull for their excitement that they've had throughout an implementation. So making sure things are documented, and maybe creating some standard operating procedures, making sure your materials are up to date. They're all things that are fallbacks to have that will help you make sure that the skills are there. And also don't lay all your eggs in one basket. So a lot of organizations end up saying, oh, now you're my system administrator and over to you and everything's your responsibility. Again, teams that work really well is where the whole team takes that accountability. Yes, you have got a system administrator, but everybody can generally, there's cross skills across the team, and that will reduce the risk of business as usual post-project implementation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's always a risk if you have any team where one task can only be done by one team member, and as with an HR system, it's just mitigating that risk and ensuring there's cover in case of people leaving or even just going on holiday. You kind of need to know that other people can take care of tasks. Something to think about there might be the ongoing training that your system provider offers. So, for example, at Ciphr, we offer the Ciphr Academy, which is an online LMS portal, which has video guides, PDF guides, and training journeys in it. So, when you have a new user come on board, or when you come on as a new client with us, there's a whole library of training materials available at your fingertips, so you can go in and self-serve. And we also have a knowledge base tied to our customer care team. So again, if you have queries, instead of raising a ticket and relying on support, you can go in and seek advice yourself, just as you would like if you wanted to Google the answer to, how do I put a picture on my wall? You can go in and kind of Google, how do I do this in Ciphr, sort of within our training solution. So that might be something, if you're worried about business as usual, look about like the ongoing training that the vendor will offer you and the ongoing support and materials that they make available so that you kind of have that backup, and you can also train up new administrators if necessary, I would say. Another question from Claire, who's in a 2,000 person company. Do many companies stagger implementation and go live across different parts of the business structure, or is it more typical to stagger the rollout of functionality?
So are you global? I don't know if you can answer that question. Are you one country or more?
I'm getting from the customer name that they are not global, but Claire, if you want to confirm or deny that to me in the chat box, that'd be awesome. We might just have to wait for Claire to send that in. So take your best guess, Anna.
I'll answer with both in mind. So global organisations tend to release solutions by country, basically. So they might say they decide to launch in UK, then in Europe, and then stagger the go lives. And if you've got a one country go live, most organisations that we work with will get the HR record ready first, together followed very soon after with the payroll, because you want to minimise the amount of time that you're spending keying in twice. And what I mean with that, if you don't know where I'm referring to, is that there'll be a period of time where your old solution, if you've got one, will still be running, but your new one will be configured. You would have migrated data from old solution onto new solution, and you need to make sure that those two are staying aligned. So when you do your parallel run, the data matches. And then once it does, and you're nice and happy, you can switch over. So we see HR and pay first, and then the other modules that tend to follow is recruitment, and then after that, then you might have a small period of time, and then you start launching like your talent modules, so like your performance management, your learning. Get your data clean, get your data ready, get employees loving the solution, and then slowly drip feed those additional functionality. It'll allow the team to get used to change. But also you'll keep that excitement going with the solution as new functionality is released. Some vendors do say to clients that they like to go into one hit. We think that the reason they say that is because ultimately from an implementation perspective, it's a shorter window for the vendors, so they'd go in and go out. Whereas if you're staggering the modular rollout, the vendor's there with you for a longer period, so more resource may be required. Advantages and disadvantages to both, but you just got to make sure that you're doing what's right for your organisation.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. And Claire happily confirmed that she is a UK-based organisation, so we've got that one right. Yeah, just to add from a Ciphr perspective, the majority of our clients will be doing a phased implementation, just exactly as Anna described, getting those like really important systems of record, your HR and your payroll sorted out, and then adding on those additional modules. It kind of spreads the load. So we talked about how it takes a lot of time to roll out a project, it takes a lot of internal capacity, and the more modules you try to launch at once, the more time it needs internally. So that kind of makes it difficult. So you're kind of spreading the load, as Anna just said. Also gives you time just to assess what's working and what functionality you might need in the long term, so whether you want to add something on, and kind of, yeah, gives that excitement. But I think I would hope that whichever vendors you're speaking with, they would be able to offer some advice about how they would typically run an implementation and what they would suggest based on your ambition. So I have spoken with some clients who maybe had quite ambitious targets to roll stuff out in a short time frame, and that's been sort of reassessed to something perhaps slightly more realistic. I don't think they'd disagree with me saying that. So a question here from Curtis: do you have any advice on how to make the right balance between making a compromise in what your needs are, i.e. not expecting a new solution to have everything, whilst also not making the wrong decision in terms of the ultimate HR vendor?
Okay, so I don't like to make too many compromises personally. So I like to get creative, Curtis. So if there's not the functionality there within the solution, I like to look at alternate ways to try and see if I can achieve what I'm trying to do. So in a prior life of mine, it was a 700 headcount organisation, so not a massive one. We were implementing a HR solution, but we couldn't get all the recruitment piece in. So we started building some workflows using other tools that the business had. So we had the Microsoft Office stack. We started building workflows for authorizations to recruit, for example, using forms and building a workflow from Microsoft. So you will have to potentially make compromises. It might not be as much as, you know, like a full module, but it could be little things around your configuration. So some systems, for example, let's say your organization allowed employees to have 2 jobs, and you wanted to track that through the system. Some systems don't cope very well with tracking two assignments per employee. Others do. So that might be something that you might have to do some manual workarounds within your solution to be able to cope with that functionality if that particular solution that you're going for is cheaper than the next one up that you'd be going for. It might be that you haven't got all the learning, you know, you want to create a learning offering for your employees, but you don't have the budget to create or buy off-the-shelf training content. So rather than using school files, you may decide actually you're going to build internal presentations using internal knowledge and then publishing those out using the learning management system that you've got, because it tends to come with no content. So there are creative things that you can do. It's just about trying to think a little bit outside the box if you need to.
Yeah, I echo that. And just to add, if, for example, I'm just using this as an example, the provider's recruitment functionality was not what you wanted, if they're a best of breed provider who can integrate with another provider's ATS, and that ATS gives you the functionality you want, then that maybe is a workaround for your problem. Is the opting for best of breed solutions gives you that flexibility to choose ones that are right for you in each of those niches. If it's a niche functionality that's the issue, if it's a core functionality, it's a central HR thing, then that's where you need to kind of look at the trade-offs and the workarounds. So I kind of liken it budget-wise into like buying a house. Like, no house you ever buy, there's always going to be something on your wish list. What's your absolute fundamentals that you can't live without? And what are the things you can kind of cope with, adjust, or maybe look at reviewing further down the line? And depending on how quickly your organisation is growing, how long are you expecting to stay with a system provider? Is it going to be a 3 to 5 year contract, or do you expect this to be longer term depending on your organisation's needs? I mean, that's something else to factor. I mean, basically, there's loads of things to think about, and it's really complicated and difficult to choose the right one. But doing our best to give you some advice here. We're just about time today, so I have one further question. Kiara, I hope I'm saying that right, it's Kiara or Kira, wanted to say they want to change their system due to lack of customer support with the current provider. They've moved to a cloud system and lost a lot of their functionality. What is your advice, because they're worried they're going to be left with a lack of support again?
So we see this again, like lots of our clients come to us because they're not getting the right support from their existing vendor. We do feedback to, because we're whole of markets at Ciphr Cloud, we do feedback any feedback that we get from our clients. And we've seen different vendors basically getting bad press at different times of the year, depending on what's happened. So sometimes what happens is the vendor will get lots of experience internally, they'll build up their team, expertise stays there, and then there's an organisational change, which means that it causes turnover within the vendor's employees. Those employees tend to move across to another vendor in most cases, so knowledge gets transferred. But the only way, you're not going to get away with that. It doesn't matter what vendor you go to, they could have a really good time, and they might have worked with us and they've had great press, and they're doing an amazing customer service for the end user. And then 3 months down the line, something happens in their organisation that causes employees to leave, and then that's when they lose the expertise, which is what causes, in most cases, that lack of service or good quality service. So it is really important. I'd obviously get references from employees that have been using the solution and the service for a while. Most people that look to change, they're looking to change in our case, like when they come to us, it's because they're not getting the right support from their existing vendor. They've had bad implementation on other systems, actually just not doing what they were expecting it to do. So try and protect yourself, hold the vendors to account. So if they've got service level agreements in place to say, they're going to get back to you within 4 hours for a critical ticket that you may have raised or an issue, if they're not doing it and you've contracted those SLAs within your terms and conditions, hold them to account. In a lot of cases, what you'll find is that they'll have to give you credits or resource back if things are not being met that are within the contract. I hope that helps.
Okay, thanks so much, Anna, and thank you to everyone for sending in your questions. Really appreciate it. And if you mind just popping us onto the final slide, we're going to just wrap up this webinar. So thank you, Anna, for sharing your expertise. It's been completely invaluable. I hope the audience has got as much out of it as I have. If you're watching live, this recording will be emailed to you later today. If you'd like to learn more about Ciphr Solutions or Silver Cloud HR services, email info@ciphr.com, or you can opt in using the form shown when this broadcast ends. That form also has a little bit of a survey asking for feedback about today's broadcast, so we welcome your honest thoughts there. Also on the screen, you'll see that that Silver Cloud HR is making available some free resources. There's a business case template, an ROI calculator, and a stakeholder mapping template. You can download those using the links that you can see on your screen now. Ciphr's next webinar is an employment law update brought to us with the legal expert Shu Smith. That's on Tuesday, the 11th of October at 11 AM. Registrations are open now at bit.ly/CipherEmpLaw. We're going to be covering everything from case law to legislative updates. And with lots of changes happening on the legislative scene, I really recommend you attend that one. It's going to be great. So thank you again for joining us today. Thank you, Anna, again for sharing so much helpful information. We really appreciate it. We hope to see you at another Ciphr webinar again soon. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.